are veggies, not your friends. It's not hard to be vegan. The ChickPeeps.
Hello, ChickPeeps. Happy New Year. Hope you're all well and hope you're feeling rested and fresh and bright and psyched to be vegan in 2020. I can't quite believe it's 2020. That just sounds so weird, but somehow it is. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. I'm very happy to have you here. I'm your host, Evie Lynch, and the ChickPeeps is your friendly weekly vegan podcast. So, for our first episode of January 2020, we were thinking about how we can help you with forming new positive mindful habits. So, we're doing a whole episode on sustainability, specifically on eliminating single-use plastics from your life. Now, this isn't necessarily a vegan topic, but as the vegan philosophy is about doing as little harm to other beings, that also involves doing your bit for the planet and your impact on nature. So this episode, Momo and I will be speaking to the one and only Bonnie Wright, who is extremely passionate and knowledgeable on how to reduce your consumption of single-use plastics, and she explains why it's so important in this interview. If you're not familiar with Bonnie, she's an actress, director, and environmentalist, and of course, one of my co-stars from Harry Potter. She played Ginny Weasley in all 8 Harry Potter films for a decade. And in recent years, she's been extremely busy sharing her vision as a director, working on everything from short films to music videos and web series. And she's currently preparing for directing her first feature-length film, which she discusses in the interview. And as I mentioned a minute ago, she is passionate about her work as an environmental activist. And she's been openly documenting her transition to plastic-free living on her social media, which I found really eye-opening. Mo and I were both really amazed by the parallels between veganism and zero waste living in how they are both so non-conformative. They're both non-conformative, mindful lifestyles that society just isn't accustomed to yet, and one which will not be represented or catered for unless we keep respectfully speaking up about it and raising awareness for. So it was really interesting to hear about living a zero waste life from that angle. I learned a lot. So without further ado, here's the interview with Bonnie. Bonnie, it's so nice to have you on the ChickPeeps podcast. We've been talking about this for a while because this season we're doing a lot more on sustainability because everyone is talking about it and asking about it. And it's been so nice to see your work as an environmentalist, to see that role in your life evolve. So thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to be on it and speak with you.
Totally.
I'm excited that we, as you said, we've been speaking about it for a while. So
I know. I've been
we finally sat down.
So I would love to know if you could start with where your interest in sustainability and environmentalism began, because much like me with veganism, when we knew each other as kids and hung out, neither of us were doing that. And it's such a big part of your life. So.
For sure, yeah. I think, I guess the more and more I reflect on it, or the longer I've sort of been interested in it in a more concentrated way, the more I've really realized that a lot of it has actually kind of came from earlier on in my life, in terms of just the kind of household I grew up in and the kind of sort of way in which we sort of, I guess, operated with that desire of what one wants and what one needs. I think a lot of obviously the issues with our environment has been due to just overconsumption of things. So I would say, without realizing it when I was younger, my family were never people who went and did a huge grocery shop and bought loads of food that we didn't eat or didn't need. It was very much more that kind of, I guess, slightly more European way of doing things that was more just day by day in terms of knowing your schedule, or my parents would just get it on their way home from work, and therefore creating waste, food waste, or packaging waste from that also was kind of minimal. So that, I think, subconsciously kind of set a tone for me that just never kind of over consuming, which is so related to obviously sustainability, and particularly my focus on packaging and single-use plastic packaging. So that sort of happened. But then more sort of on a sort of advocacy activism kind of side of it, must have started the main focus maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I was trying to help to raise awareness around a UK campaign that was trying to get in plastic-free aisles in supermarkets.
Oh.
And so I was kind of assisting and helping to try and kind of push that. That unfortunately didn't really happen, but an article that I had sort of been a part of, Greenpeace in the UK, read that article, and then they approached me with interest to sort of collaborate with them in some way, and that ended up being the first thing I did with them was go on one of their ships. when it was like going down the Atlantic coast, doing sort of mainly just awareness raising, and also a lot of data collection of microplastics with like trawling, which is essentially like fishing for plastic. And so that trip just sort of threw me into it, in the sense that, you know, all the campaigners, the deckhands on the ships were just like so passionate, and you know, this was their life, and it was just really inspiring to see the commitment. And whilst being on the ship, I kind of felt like I got to go back, and this is all I should do all day, every day, is campaign for this, you know. So it's from that kind of big surge of inspiration, I guess my focus has continued in the sense of my daily habits and just how I operate in a, you know, lowest impact way I can day by day. And also just educating myself really around the topic has been, I think, the main sort of interest of mine, and knowing that like through knowledge you're able to take like better action and know what needs protecting.
Yeah.
So it's been a really interesting journey of some days feeling like it's everything and we're moving forwards, and other days just being completely overwhelmed by it.
So that was my next question. Like, at first, when you got back from this trip and you're like, cool, I gotta do this, gotta change the world and remove plastic from everything, did you feel like completely overwhelmed at first? And because I know it's the exact same thing with veganism. Same thing, you learn about it, you're like, oh my God, this is all I should do all the time. This is the worst thing in the like, this is the biggest issue. And then you go home and then you're like, oh, it's so hard. And I have a life and I don't want to be doing this 24/7.
Yeah.
So how did you approach it? Like by like, you know, making those changes to go zero waste? Like, where did you start and how did you avoid being overwhelmed?
I think, I guess it's like also knowing when you take on things, what can you take on collectively that's like just part of the collective movement of like what needs doing in this world in terms of just like the global, and then also just like actually what can I realistically do that's not gonna like cause me more stress, because then it's like counterproductive. So I found, in terms of personally beginning to lessen my reliance on single-use plastics, I found the easiest way to do it was like choosing kind of a different sort of area of my life to start with one by one, and not trying to do it all at once. Because I tried to think, oh, I need to do this all at once. And then you also are of that belief, and I'm not that belief. I don't want to just throw everything away that is plastic in my house, because that would be extremely wasteful too. So it was a question of finishing all the products that I already had, be that household products, beauty products, laundry detergent, all those things. And then begin kind of, I started really with my kitchen, I guess, and the plastic around food packaging. And then I kind of went into beauty stuff, and then I went into kind of cleaning products. And then, so it's been section by section. I can't say I'm not still overwhelmed, and I'm definitely not 100% zero waste. I have incredible respect for those who can be, but I've found the small little bits of packaging on certain things super difficult to eradicate just in my lifestyle.
Like what kind of things?
I would say, I mean, even if you get things that are, you know, made of glass or aluminium that you know you can recycle, there's so many seals on things, or drinks. And I think, you know, there's so much policy around seals showing that hasn't been tampered with, or health and safety. There are sadly like so little bits of things, or just like small things of tags, or just like random things that end up, you know, just coming around. So it's also been a really interesting way to just, I think, simplify like what I consume, and realize that like I don't need something just because it's like quick and convenient, you know, like just thinking, oh, I'm out and I don't have my reusable containers, but like I really want a coffee or a tea or a drink, and I'm like, I don't need it.
Right.
I don't have my cup. I'm not going to have it. Like, I'll make tea when I get home, and like, it's fun. Like, you know, I think there's just so many moments that has made me just stop and slow down, which I'm sure is the exact same.
It's the same.
Yeah,
definitely.
And it's so interestingly connected. And I think, again, it's just this carelessness that we have got to, that is not also any fault of ours, which I think is important to. It's just circumstance of how life has evolved and progressed in the sense of just how we live day by day, and like the access to things and how we're all living much more like global on the go lives that aren't even necessarily even in a place of work, an office, or a, you know, people are just living these like stranger lives that mean everything needs to be convenient. But I am also of the belief that like we haven't been in this way for that long. We can like reimagine ourselves out of it.
It definitely creates that sense of mindfulness, doesn't it, around being less waste. I've noticed that too, in a way that isn't usually promoted. It's just like a byproduct of just being more conscious. Same with veganism, I think.
Yeah, you make way more deliberate choices, don't you? Like things that actually like kind of are more aligned with you or resonate with you more. So.
And I think that's what's is kind of enjoyable in it, in the sense that, you know, you make a choice that reflects your values and like your beliefs. And therefore, when you're doing it, you like enjoy it. So you're coming at the process from like a healthy place, in the sense of like you're using your intuition and you're in your like best, happiest. I don't know. We all know if we feel down and like we shouldn't be doing something, but we do it anyway, we don't enjoy it. And it's like toxic in a way to our body because of just the mental way you go into it. So I think when you feel like truly aligned with something, you know, it like sits well with you.
Right. Yeah, it's a beautiful way.
And which is also something to be very mindful of when around other people.
Yeah.
Who that isn't of interest to them. And I think it's, I mean, in the sense that like, which obviously you will get as well with veganism, in the sense that, you know, I could be really into that. You know, friends of mine know I'm really in or against single-use plastics, and they can sort of either be inspired by those choices you're making or just decide to kind of completely tear it apart and ridicule it.
Really? You get that too? It's
no way. I'm
so surprised.
Yeah. Just because people are like, oh, what's that going to do? Like, that doesn't even matter. Like, nothing's going to do it. Or also just being like, oh, come on, like, get like, there's nothing you can do. Like, you are like, what's your small choices doing for any either health of the planet, like, sort of changing the way consumers are going to do anything. I mean, you know, I truly believe that like all the small actions we make, however sort of depressing that we are kind of data at the end of the day, if we can be positive versions of that, then big consumer, you know, corporate companies can see the fashions of how things are changing and create more options or change things they're doing. I mean, it's
even in the vegan world, one of the biggest dairy producers in America recently went bankrupt, and that's because of the collective amount of people now choosing plant-based milk. So it all has a knock-on effect, doesn't it?
It really does. And it's those moments where people, I think, naturally feel so disempowered by our choices because we're living in such a kind of confusing time that it is also really hard to inspire people when they're like, how do you feel like you make a difference? Or like, how can I feel like anything I do makes a difference? It's just such an example of just like the health of everyone, I think, and our abilities to think that like the individual has power.
Yeah. And it's a cynical way to think the opposite way, isn't it? It's like a reflection of a negative mind to be like, what's the point of my life?
Yeah, basically.
Why don't you decide that? Why don't you let that be up to you?
Definitely. Even from doing beach cleans, so I do beach cleans in Cornwall with Surfers Against Sewage. They're great. And whenever someone says that kind of thing to me or anything of that nature, I always think of like one little thing that you pick up from the beach, one crisp packet is not now going to go in a seal or a dolphin.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've all probably seen those pictures of birds and they're covered in plastic inside. Yeah. So that's harsh. But going back to what you said about the Arctic Sunrise trip. So what were you actually doing on that? Were you shocked by what you found?
So with the microplastic kind of finding with the trawling, I mean, for instance, they do it every day when they're on the ships. And they do it for like an hour or maybe multiple times a day, but like an hour each time. So essentially the net is only, you know, really the size of your hand, the opening in which the stuff can go in. And that's going in one tiny section of the ocean for an hour. I mean, that's like, you know, and not one time over like a 2-month trip did they ever not pull up a type of plastic. So it's like, that's just, and you know, you're looking at this beautiful, pristine water and just the kind of nano micro sort of tiny parts of plastic are just everywhere. And it's just, I think, that to me, the scale of being out on the water, feeling how big it was when you're out at sea, yet still thinking every single time they just for that moment put the net down, they brought something up. So that was definitely overwhelming. And then essentially the plan of that trip was they were stopping in loads of different ports to like bring the ship in and allow members of the public to come on board, learn about plastics, learn about all the other different environmental issues that they cover. So I guess kind of connect with coastal communities and I guess allow people a bit more of a first-hand understanding of like who they are, because I think Greenpeace often, you know, they're so known for doing big sort of like public stunts and different things, but actually knowing their work is maybe not so known. So that was this sort of idea of that trip. And then since then with Greenpeace have done different trips. Like we took a petition to the Coca-Cola headquarters in Atlanta, and I organized this plastic-free picnic idea with them last summer. And then a whole project in the UK on UK rivers. So we did again similar things. That was like the first biggest research project on the pollution of UK rivers that I think was all run out of like Exeter University. And so they had a really good grant to do that research. So you could see the difference between like rivers in around cities and then like rivers that were more around rural areas. And so that was interesting going to different rivers with them. So yeah, it's been a really nice mixture of like both the UK and the US.
You surf, don't you?
Yeah.
Would you say you're a bit of a water baby? Love the ocean?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely do. I guess I also, again, in the sense of wanting to protect the ocean and those that dwell before me, I just respect it and I'm very grateful of how much joy it brings me and how much joy I gain from just even living, knowing it's near me. And I think just with all things, just that giving back and like showing that you respect something that is so much greater than you, and just how it's so vital in the whole cycle of how our planet works. But yeah, I always love, I grew up right in the city of London, but our family has a house like right on the beach in the south coast of England. So without knowing it, I realized that actually that environment became super influential to me more than I thought. I think I always thought I was such a like city girl, and then I realized like actually so much of my work in my directing and the stories I want to tell and what I'm interested in are actually heavily inspired more so from that environment, I think.
So you've been doing a lot of directing work in the last few years. That's one of your passions. And you're creating a movie about plastic pollution. So I wonder, could you tell us about that? Like, is it a story? Is it a documentary? How is that going?
Yeah. So this will be my first feature-length film that I'll direct.
Oh, wow.
So it's been an exciting, thank you. Yeah, it's been one of those things that you aim towards, but you never know how long it will take you to get there. So it's been a fun journey to it. But yeah, so it'll be a fictional, not a documentary. And the current working title of it is Unearthed. And it's essentially, again, I really love horror films and sci-fi, but I never thought I would direct one. So it's been an interesting, so it's not sci-fi, not yet. Sci-fi is later on in my life when I have more funding to make it. But it's essentially a sort of thriller monster movie about pollution. So it's set in a small town in Northern California that is around a river that is close to the coast. Because again, I'm really interested in sort of showing that like our connection to the ocean and how everything in terms of bad things that come from the earth can often run off the earth onto rivers and into the ocean. So that's kind of the reason for the setting. But essentially the monster is made of oil, plastic, trash, pollution. And it's this idea that rather than the monster being kind of nature coming back to like haunt us, the monster is more like an extension of us, and it's more like a mirror to us. So this idea that like we're the pollution and we're the monster at the end of the day. We're what we should be afraid of. So it's a fun, sounds pretty depressing. I think it's pretty fun. But it's okay, maybe not fun, but it's very it's, you know, high energy. It's definitely like action thriller. They're trying to figure it out.
And narrative.
Like, yeah. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to shooting that next year.
Cool. Yeah. And it has people cast, obviously.
Not yet, no. So it's all still early days, but I still do believe that it will be shot next year.
I mean, it's not like monsters.
There's sorry. Yeah, no, it's not. It's live action.
That's the term that I was looking for.
There's real people. No.
Oh,
that'd be fun
exciting.
actually to make like a animation, but no, this is live action.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. That's that's a really ambitious idea.
It's definitely ambitious for sure. I'm also just so interested in documentaries obviously are incredibly powerful, but I think also they can be quite intimidating for a lot of people to watch, or like too scared in knowing that it's just going to be all doom and gloom. And I'm kind of interested in how you play with a genre that people love to watch, and maybe pull people in to watch the film who maybe don't know the kind of the sort of message and metaphor of the film, but are just going because it's the genre that they love. And more kind of whilst you're in the palm of someone's hands of like the cinema, you're able to kind of inject, you know, a message that can hopefully allow people to change their minds or learn something new or have a realization. So I'm always interested in how you're able to kind of like subvert or like cross genres, or also just always try, I think with everything is really important, is to make sure that you're always bringing in new people into the dialogue, or people who otherwise would have not found it out of their own initial interest.
How to engage people to care.
Exactly. Engage people to care, make things interesting and accessible, and not just like one kind of track mind kind of thing.
I feel the same way. So I always say with veganism, like we just need more stories, more narrative-led things. Like I still maintain Babe is the best animal rights movie.
It's true.
Because it spoke to me as a child before I didn't even understand those things, but I felt them.
And Chicken Run, do you remember that?
Oh God,
Chicken Run. I guess there was like was Okja? Okja was kind
of yes, very much so. Yeah, that was. I love that. Well, as in it's heartbreaking, but it's powerful. It's heartbreaking. It's very good. Yeah, that made Katie vegetarian actually.
Oh, really? Yeah. And it's like the power of film, really. And you know, sometimes when sometimes I can think like, why am I in the entertainment industry? It's such a kind of like, you know, it does promote the consumer kind of idea. Also, film sets, filmmaking is an incredibly expensive, wasteful thing. So you can be like, oh my God, what I'm doing, this is like so against so many things, or like it's fueling things I'm against. But then at the end of the day, you're like, but this is such a powerful way to connect to people. And, you know, it's still the medium that we understand things and communicate through of our time. So I think it's like, you can reach a lot of people, I think, through storytelling in any kind of medium of media, you know, be that podcast, be that television, be that film, books. Like I think
it's the fast track route to people, isn't it?
Really
yeah. You said recently as well, didn't you, that you wanted to create a zero waste set? And
that is my dream. I mean, essentially, we're going to try and obviously build next to no set, so use all existing locations rather than build things.
Wow.
Which is pretty usually, honestly, also the cheaper way to do things anyway. Most films would be shot on location. But a big thing will be catering. I want like the catering and everything to be completely zero waste. And
zero waste. Wow.
Yeah.
Do they do that? Zero waste.
Yeah, there are. I mean, there's a great organization called Earth Angel that are out of the UK, but they have offices here, I think, too. And they help sets to be, you know, less wasteful but not totally zero. I don't think there has actually been completely, but I think you could do it. I mean, I think, I mean, obviously it would be also to do with like budgets. It would be more expensive to do it. So it depends how much budget you can allocate to it. And maybe you decide at the end of the day, you have to decide like certain things. Because if you went down to the nitty gritty, I mean, if you went into the hair and makeup department, you'd have to be like, you have to be you reusing or reusable cotton rounds, face
they don't have to learn new
brush,
techniques,
you know what I mean? All those
products,
things. But really, a lot of those things are not necessarily that extremely difficult.
Yeah.
If again you have the foundation to do things. For instance, a lot of those things you need like laundry machines, running water, you know, you need to be, whereas if you're on a remote location, you know, disposables are just like inserted into everything. I think that's where I think there are enough great new products and methods and companies in terms of like the food world, at least, or at least like catering for everyone that you could do.
Yeah.
But then it comes down to like, you know, you're setting up a light and you've got lighting things, you've got gaffer tape for the markers.
Yeah.
So, but it's going to be, I'm very out of pure just interest. And maybe some people have said you should like make sure you document
that process of making, that's true.
Just in terms of then sharing what I find.
Teach the industry something.
Definitely.
It's so funny though to hear all these things that you're thinking about, because I always think back to when we were doing the Potter films. Do you remember the crates of Evian bottles every day, like the plastic?
And they didn't even have recycling.
There was no recycling.
But again, it was not like, then there was a time where we collected all the bottle caps. There was once an organization that if you collected bottle caps, it would go towards a wheelchair for someone.
Oh, that was the one water?
Yeah, I can't remember, but there was one.
They switched to a charity.
But it wasn't even just the brand at the beginning. It was just any bottle caps. And then they probably switched brands. But again, that came at a time when it just wasn't, people weren't aware. I mean, we drank out of styrofoam cups on those sets. Every time you wanted a cup of tea, like mini styrofoam, you know, so it's all the, you know, styrofoam is like the worst polluter.
So you find it on the beach all the time.
Yeah, and it's like one of the worst plastics. I mean, if anything, you try and policy-wise get out of any city, it's polystyrene.
Us ChickPeeps know how important it is to get our B12 vitamins. Not only does it help us stay spangly, it's also an essential supplement for anyone following a vegan or vegetarian diet, as vitamin B12 does not naturally occur in plant foods. B12 deficiency is a serious matter and can lead to irreversible nerve damage. So to be happy and healthy, it's important we take a high-quality supplement every day. Our favourite is the B12 Liquid from Viva Life, as it absorbs into the bloodstream much easier than it does with capsules. And like all of their products, it is third-party tested for quality and purity, and is certified free from heavy metals and over 500 different herbicides and pesticides. If you want to get the best B12 out there, along with any other vegan supplements, you can head to vivolife.com and use code ChickPeeps10 for 10% off.
So if we were back on the sets now, what would you march down to the David's office and change?
I would have everyone be given a reusable water bottle. That could be, and it's fun, you know. Each movie you have Harry Potter 5, 6, 7. It's got a different design on it. People would love that. So you have that. You have water fountains, like, you know, that get refilled by the bottles or reused, or like a good filtration system is actually kind of better, because then you're not having the emissions of the van come every day with water. So like a really good filtration system that everyone then has their reusable water bottle. And then, I mean, how I would design it is day one, not only would you get a water bottle, I guess depending, like obviously in Leaves and Studios, we did have china plates and metal cutlery in terms of food. But so stick to that. And if not, if you're on location, I would say you'd get like your own reusable bamboo utensil set and like maybe like a hot drink kind of cup thing. And, you know, it was your responsibility to sort of like have that on you. With you and
then
like
what
that.
You might get fined if you didn't have it.
You have to buy
you have to put, you remember they had Pound Friday? You'd have to put in extra Pound Friday.
Because I guess, I mean, either you carry it on yourself or you just have cups, you know, reusable type cups around that area, and you just put them back into a thing that get washed kind of thing. Which they definitely had the infrastructure to do on a set like that was in a studio with a kitchen. So maybe that. So basically reusables is the answer to big thing that I would suggest in terms of massively lowering the waste of a film set. And then obviously you'd start thinking about the kind of food that they're buying. Obviously there's lots of packaging there. I would say you'd start thinking about the afterlife of their sets and stuff, like where they throw things.
You don't need to worry about Harry Potter. They're all in museums.
But there's also a lot of things that will be thrown away. You know, and just in terms of, you know, you do a fiberglass wall of a set, you're going to have like, they probably did 10 versions of the wall because they were testing things, you know? So like, where do you send those? Is there good like places that will take apart the materials and break down things to the best way they can be? Are they making sure that like if there's any toxicity within the materials that they're sending it to somewhere that is properly taking care of that and not seeping into the soil? You know, do they like, are there even ways that like when they source material, can they be resourcing recycled material rather than like new material? Or is there any organizations that will take donated sets to use for
charity
production?
like that,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think there's so many different ways. You
Possibilities.
definitely would need a whole producer
Yeah.
taking upon this job.
there's
But
a
it's so
sustainability
interesting.
producer.
Like
That'd
once
be
you
so
open the
cool.
box, it just
Yeah.
there's so many facets.
So speaking of Leavesden, we're kind of speaking of Hogwarts
Mhm.
because I know we obviously want to talk about sustainability and veganism, but there are going to be a lot of people who are
wanna talk
just
about Harry
listening
Potter.
to this podcast because they want us
It's
to talk
true.
about Harry Potter. I will give you one question, people. That is it. I was
Just
thinking,
one.
how sustainable do you think Hogwarts was? And do you ever, like,
Ooh.
when you read the books or think about the
That's a good
films, do you
question.
ever think about aspects of the wizarding world that have been more sustainable?
It was just funny when people will sometimes joke like, oh, it's a shame there's not a spell just to like get rid of all the plastic in the world or whatever. And I'm like, tell me about it. That would be pretty
when
good.
you do press, they joke about that?
Or even just like friends will make a joke to it, but like not, but mainly just if people ask interviews or I don't know, be like, oh, it's a shame that I'm like, yeah, that would be a shame. If only there was a deep dark room we could put it all in.
Remove
how? Yeah, exactly.
Just shove it in the
plastic.
water.
Landfill is the removal requirement. Is Hogwarts what's it sustainable?
You know, like the feasts.
I don't know, not
Remember?
really. I bet there's a lot of waste at those feasts. I mean, there were a lot of waste on the sets of the feast, so there was probably a lot.
That's
Like
true.
it was like very decadent way of eating, but I guess that was really like the feast of the first day for people to feel at home. I mean, I think, and obviously that's what Hogwarts was and is to all the students and all the fans, and is a home. So I think that feeling of like warmth and decadence is maybe not the right word, was maybe like how they created that warmth.
Yeah.
Which I understand, but I also wonder what their rations were like most days.
Yeah.
Was it like Oliver Twist and he was like, more please?
Or did like the house elves eat the random?
Exactly. And
Oh, that's
also
kinda
think of
sad
all
to
the
think.
different animals and creatures that I wonder if they had like a
that
feeding
Hagrid-
zone that
Hagrid
Hagrid
would
took all
pick
the
up
scraps.
barrel
Yeah.
every day.
There must have been the pig equivalent to like the, intelligent kind of animal that would love to eat all the scraps. and
Yeah.
things like that.
I was just thinking, actually, there really isn't much plastic in the Hogwarts world. Like, think of the
No, and
aesthetic.
everything's
it's all
like-
tankards and glass.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
brass.
Again, it's like there to last, right? I mean, that's why
Yeah.
her world, Jo Rowling's world, is so incredible, is because it's so intricately layered and it's like permanent. It's
And
like
its own
there,
world,
and it's
yeah.
got history. Even, for instance, on filming The Great Hall, like the stone that was laid for that set was like real stone, York
Was
stone.
it?
Yeah.
Whereas other sets, they would have just made like a kind of flooring, plastic lino-y fabricated flooring. But
yeah.
A, they knew they were going to go for 10 years. And B, it gives like weight and reality. And I think so many of these new plastic throwaway things, just personally, there's something, even just the feeling of them, there's no romanticism to it. It feels very just ugly to me.
Wow.
Whereas I would say Hogwarts, there is like, it's all about like each plate or
Meaningful
thing would have been made by like
items.
a craftsman.
Yeah.
It would be actually all a craft woman, craft man.
Yeah.
Like, it would be.
But not even in the film, like in the books, you don't.
Yeah, that's what I
hear-
mean. But I even
Yeah.
think like in the
The
books, when
world.
you think about it, you'd imagine it to be all very. Even if you go to like Diagon Alley, everyone's like, it's all people, individuals making
Yeah.
clothes,
Yeah.
having a bookshop. It's all
Being very connected to their
independently
craft.
owned.
Yeah.
Like
There's no
craft.
fast
It's not
fashion.
like
Yeah.
they don't have the, I don't know, the Amazon, the Target of the Wizarding
Yeah,
World.
I guess it hadn't even occurred to me, but I guess they don't have plastic in the Wizarding World.
Yeah,
Well,
they
it
do.
makes me wonder, what would Arthur Weasley think of it? Would he think it's like a great muggle?
He'd be like, look at this thing. It's pretty good. It never breaks
It does.
down.
Yeah. That'd be
I'm
so
like, Dad,
funny.
no, that's not good. Okay, did you not know?
I've got a really weird question. Is there a bin at any point in any scene of Hogwarts?
Oh my God.
Or in any scene of
Never saw.
Because I was just imagining in my head all this, while you were talking then, these recycling bins all over Hogwarts, and it was just very weird in my brain.
I also kind of make a joke of saying like, you know, the bin is not, or the trash can, I don't know how many Americans listen to things when I say bin. Like,
trash can.
It is not a Mary Poppins bag. You know, it's not this like
Yeah.
limitless, endless thing that you just throw things in and there's no bottom to it, you know.
Disappears,
And that is like an analogy or an image was so in my mind as a child, this magical bag that things came out of, and where did they go?
It's endless,
And I think we often think, you know, the minute we just put something away, it's pretty magic because like, oh, it's gone. And you're like, it's not magic, you know, it's magically gone from your life, but your responsibility with that product is now ended, but it has a long life after that. And I think it's going back to like the mindfulness in that sense. That's been the biggest changer of not only did it, I think the minute I started thinking about the plastics and the afterlife of that, you can't not think about every other thing you interact with. You know, it's like so connected.
Yeah. Wow.
But
that
yeah,
does make me wonder. Yeah, they didn't have bins and all that.
Only we had a
but
magical
also,
place.
Did you hear that really gross update on Pottermore about how wizards used to get rid of their?
Oh yeah.
How did you know this?
No.
When they used to need to relieve themselves, they would do it on the ground and then they would vanish it. This is on Pottermore.
No.
This is real.
But
that
like
J.K.
what?
Rowling
Just when
wrote
you're
this.
walking anywhere?
Yeah. No, in Hogwarts, specifically in Hogwarts. It's saying that they didn't.
Well, then
it was like
not enough toilets.
Before they had plumbing. Yeah. So,
well, but again, where did it go?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm like,
where do things go?
Is there a weird? Sorry, I have to say a poop vessel.
Yeah, or is that like a drop-off place? Yeah.
And because like her message in the book, she's always like, magic doesn't fix things. It doesn't fix like prejudices.
Yeah, and he can't make something
social
go
justice
away.
issues. And, but she
or someone come back. You know, we can't.
Yes, that's true. There are rules that just even the magic
there
world
needs to be boundaries
can't overcome.
And rules.
So
well, maybe we should pose that question to her.
Like, we should.
Where does all the rubbish go?
I have a lot of questions about sustainability at Hogwarts.
Little house elves.
It's actually a great crossover. I never thought of it.
Yeah. So anyway, fans. That was fan service. Hope you enjoyed that. So let's talk about. So this is a podcast about veganism, as you know, and as we've just been talking about, there's so many parallels between veganism and environmentalism, and the impact that plant-based eating can have on the environment. So we tend to hear about it in vegan circles. We get told, why are you not more sustainable? Why are you not talking about this? I wonder in environmentalism circles, is veganism talked about a lot? And
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously from all ends of the spectrum of people kind of being shocked that not every environmentalist is a vegan, and also people, I guess the main thing that the crossovers is just as we say, everything that I've said is echoed in the same spaces. So I think it's just realizing how you can like harness both groups of people to knowledge and like, I guess, compassion and empathy towards something. I think like finding that middle ground before finding the middle ground of like what you are, what I'm not, I think, because that then becomes like super intense and aggressive. I mean, there are, you know, activists or like people that are known to like come to certain rallies and strikes just to sort of, you know, attack people on what they're not doing and what they should be doing. And I think with all those things, it's more interesting and useful to find the similarities. But yeah, the crossovers are there. And, you know, in my own way, there is certain things that even within vegan food that I think are more sustainable than others. So it's like, that's also an interesting dialogue. Right. And I think that's knowing that we all choose our own battles, and like, that's what's going to affect everything. Like, I've chosen my like for this moment path and battle, and it's knowing how that it goes into all these different pockets of, you know, say food is one, and then you're going to have something through your lens of what you're interested in. So it's been an interesting like place you see the similarities, and then places that I would like maybe disagree with something because maybe I don't think it's actually the most sustainable way, whether or not because of the way it's packaged, or whether or not because of the way it's processed, or whether or not the farming methods to use that are actually not been good for the land, whether or not the amount of water it uses is not. So it's all we're all coming at it from a different angle, but for sure, I mean, the overlap is huge.
Yeah. And I know you're not 100% vegan, but in your activism, I know you're very mindful about it. Is it something you encourage, like, as one of the tips to help people be more sustainable?
I would say a big tip I speak about on food is where you can, eating whole foods. So in terms of like a potato, an orange, a kind of like unprocessed, changed food is going to have it's going to be the cleanest for you, for your own health. It's going to be the best in terms of the afterlife of the product, because if you can, you're just going to compost it, and it's not going to, it's just going to be a continual energy loop. So I would say trying to eat as much whole foods as possible. And I would say I'm more interested in like vegetable, fruit heavy diet than I am about really my interest in making sure I get loads of protein. Like I'm just not that. I think, even though I did, interestingly, recently speak at the LA City Council to pass a policy that we passed that by law, all places of government buildings, zoos, parks have to, by law now, have a vegan option protein.
Really?
Yeah, I passed it. I went and spoke
That's
in front of the LA City Council members. Amazing. So I think with all things, it's like,
that's so
until we talk about until we talk about that, why I was so passionate about speaking about that is because it's all about accessibility. We can all talk about what we're all interested in, but until we make it accessible and affordable for people to make these choices, I don't really think anyone can be telling anyone you should do this and your impact will be less on the environment, because it's like, I can't do that. I can't even afford to buy that. So, or I don't even have it in my local shop. So I think my tips are always like, I try and be as loose as possible. And in terms of about food, I would just say least processed whole foods and like as vegetable and fruit heavy as you can. And maybe like just start at home in a space that you can control. And maybe when you're out and about, it's just too difficult for you to do that, to be, have a 70% of your plate to be vegetables. Like that's just pretty hard to find wherever you are. So I would say that I think it's like making things not overwhelming and always respecting that the person you're talking to might not necessarily have the accessibility to the things that you're telling them to do.
Yeah. Having compassion. This episode of the ChickPeeps is sponsored by Vistro. Vistro is an amazing service that delivers fully prepared vegan meals straight to your door anywhere within the contiguous US. With the holidays behind us now, many of us are looking to level up with our vegan cooking. Maybe you're brand new to veganism and don't know the difference between a yam and a sweet potato. I still don't. Or maybe you're a junk food vegan who wants to add just a smidge of veg to your diet. Or maybe you just started a new sport and you need your nutrition to be on point. Well, Vistro does away with all the fuss around food prep and makes sure busy vegans stay healthy with their organic, handcrafted meals that are prepared fresh and delivered frozen. With Vistro, there's no chopping, no cooking, and no cleaning. Just heat, eat, and love. And if you enter code PEEPS at checkout, you get 25% off your first order. Just go to tryvistro.com/chickpeeps to order on Vistro today.
Well, that really spoke to me, what you said about focusing what people are doing instead of picking holes in what they're not doing. We see that a lot in veganism as well. Or activists who aren't vegan and people just focus on that little point. I think that's so counterproductive to the movement and everything.
Exactly.
And I noticed when I started to become more environmentally friendly, I started to look at companies and think, oh, they're doing that. And I get really unhappy actually. During the day, I was so negative.
Yeah. It's easy to be like, oh, they're not. And with all things, it's like celebrating progress.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
for instance, a policy like that passes. Well, the best thing to do is next time you're in a park, make sure you celebrate that progress by choosing that option.
Yeah.
Or in the same way, you're traveling in an airport, celebrate the fact that more are getting better water fountains to fill up your water bottle, and make sure you do it. I think with all, it's easy as well to not think about the things that have become better,
There's so many of them. There's so many things to celebrate. And so the people that listen to the podcast, I would say, are quite active when it comes to things like swapping out, being less wasteful. But what would you say is one of the most effective things people can do, or actions that they can take you think will have the biggest impact right now?
Yeah, I mean, with all things, like I say, I think a good start is just doing things within the kind of your home, essentially, because I think there's less. I mean, obviously you can have roommates, you can live in a household, but you can slowly be doing things and people will just like pick up on those things that look easy and fun and want to do it. I think you can't heavily handed just try and change your whole household. I think you have the best way to lead is just by like doing it and living it and the example.
Attractivism kind of approach.
Yes, yeah. And I would say, I mean, I'm just going to say things that I love because I think they're like the ones I find most enjoyable. I would say in terms of my food, I would say there's so much packaging, but you can shop without a lot of packaging. So whether or not that's just investing in like a bag or two of reusable like produce bags for fruit and vegetables or bulk foods, or whether or not it's investing in a few Tupperwares that you can save food in, or investing in like reusable sort of sandwich bags. There's a company called Stasher bags. They're just things that can enable you to feel like you have the materials at hand to not be quickly wasteful. And just stop buying things like kitchen towel and paper towels and use reusable, or just use your tea cloth. And like if you go out, and that's just waste in general. It's not even just, a lot of these things are mainly just about waste, full stop. And maybe take up having your own compost, or maybe trying to find your local compost drop off. That will massively reduce your waste. It has for me, realizing like, oh, actually like a big portion of my waste was actually just organic material that could be energy again. So I would say a food thing is a easy way to do it. Even just questioning like the companies that you say you buy from, like the simple things, whether or not that's like toilet roll, the cleaning product you use, like just even if you can't buy it without plastic, at least start questioning the contents of it and seeing how toxic or non-toxic the things are in what you buy. I think just like reading the small print, bothering to like look at where you're buying things, or like you say, question maybe the brands that you buy from. I've done that a lot, I feel, and then found brands that are doing all the work for me, in the sense that they have a really strong mission. They're making sure that they fit these certain great guidelines that I think are like quote unquote sustainable, and therefore I can like support that brand. But I just think we're also at a time where there are so many great brands coming out with like such desirable things that are lower impact, whether or not that's better food choices, better beauty products. And I don't know, it's an exciting time that it can be like a fun thing to do.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun thing.
Yeah.
You can turn it into that. You have to reframe it slightly.
Yeah.
But it can be. And so if somebody's already got that all down, their own personal life, if they were then to take it up a level and get a bit more hands-on, like kind of this kind of things that you've done, would you recommend, like, can people just go on a Greenpeace activism?
I mean, you can definitely, I would say people always say, what can I do? And a lot of people have always said to me, and I've heard, actually one of the biggest impactful things you can do is find a local organization and volunteer with them.
Okay.
And like actually commit to like a community-based thing. And I think that's what I have found to really help in the overwhelm. A, you can meet friends through it. B, you can really connect with your local community and find like what's actually impacting your local environment. So I would say find a local organization or a local chapter to a big organization that you like. And then maybe start thinking about the places you do, whether or not that's your workplace, whether you're at school or at college, whether it's like your local coffee shop you love going to or restaurant. Start asking them questions. You go to your local cafe and you're like, oh, I noticed that, you quite easily hand everyone a plastic lid to their coffee or a straw. Like, have you ever thought of kind of only offering that when people ask? Or how about we have an initiative of you get X amount of money off when you bring your reusable cup? Or like just trying in a very like non kind of, have you not thought about this? Because they could have already thought about it. So like, I don't know what your thoughts are on this and what you're already doing to be more sustainable, but have you ever thought of this?
So do you do that? You go around cafes and be like, hello.
I'm more, I guess in my sense, I would do it more in like I'm trying to do it on a more like a bigger scale or like a policy way. But yeah, I mean, the local places that I like to use, I have definitely asked them. Or when they've then been like, oh yeah, well, we're using this, this, and this. And then you're like, oh, well, you know, just because you're having plant-based plastic cups now doesn't actually mean that's going to help the crisis, because that's still waste and everyone's not actually composting those. So it's like it opens up this dialogue, and then a lot of the time they're like, oh my gosh, we didn't even realize that, we bought all these thinking we're making a better choice. And I'm like, no, reusable is good. How about having an initiative or like having your own cups? So for sure, I definitely am not afraid to have those dialogues with people, or complain when I ask for something and someone doesn't listen to me and they bring it anyway. Like, I'll not be, because you have to, because I mean, I've even had times where I've like asked to speak to managers about it.
Go you. Yeah. That's great. Wow.
Or like in your workplace, you know, before or not, you realize people are like, oh yeah, I'm really interested in that too. Or like, I've been wanting to do that, been a bit afraid to speak up, you know, find people who, again, everyone is willing, but they just don't really have the maybe interest or time to like look into it. Yeah. So if you have the interest, people will, I'm sure, help to make it happen. But you need to do the groundwork and research and be like, look, these are the 3 options that we could change in our office kitchen to this. How would you feel about it? And I've looked into it. Yeah. They're going to be like, okay, cool. We'll do it. Like, I think it's
we need to make a challenge around this for the
listeners.
We
will.
Yeah.
Have a nice little
I mean, that's a challenge is always, I mean, I started a group about 2 years ago now with my friend called Waste Watch. And it's basically this like meetup group that we organize because of this, really, this idea, like, what can I really do? Yeah. That's like local, it's tangible, and I'm learning and I'm connecting with other people. And how do I feel like less overwhelmed? So we started a group that first was every month, that started right here in my living room floor, and now we have like 60 people or so come to the events. So it's, cool. And we do it now more like every 3 months or 4 months, and we choose a different topic around the huge umbrella of sort of environment, and we get speakers come so that everyone can feel best informed, and then we end the evening with like tangible actions that we're going to go home.
That's so fun. Yeah, that makes it a community thing.
And now it's this great thing where I look out and I don't really know half the people that are there, and it's amazing that like all these new people have come and
into the fold.
Very
cool.
I wish we had that in England. London.
Yeah, we should think about that.
Start Waste Watch. It was meant to be like a play on like Neighborhood Watch.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought it was like Weight Watch.
All that too.
Clever
Waste
either way.
watches.
Yeah. I found a quote in one of your articles which made me laugh, because it says, remember, always say thank you to those who respect your request. We want them to like straw-free customers. I laugh because that's the same thing with veganism. We're always being like, don't be a judgy vegan, don't put them off.
For sure,
like,
or like super picky and like, okay, yes, we get it, we'll bring it, you know.
Because it's about like effective activism. You want them to want to work with you and please you.
And it's how you, again, going back to like how storytelling of issues is like the most effective way you can inspire, influence. And so even you talking about something, ordering something, is a story, and like how you communicate yourself to be. And also I think what's so important is not to assume that someone already cares about that or knows about that or is already doing it for you anyway. I think we assume, and like then people will get combative and just like angry, and then it's not inspiring. So I think that's also the really important when you do, like I was saying, go to like local places. Don't assume that they're not already on a mission to try and be better. Right. And again, it's just an interesting, you know, there are times where you feel like you use the wrong language suddenly and you do annoy someone and you're like, oh no, like I didn't really, that was not my intention.
Them off our movement.
Exactly. They hate me, so they hate it. So it's an interesting, and you know, if mistakes are made, don't get me wrong, I've complained, as I said, to managers before. Yeah. But some things you just have to let, you know, be a mistake. Yeah. Or be misinterpreted. Or, you know, you try and be polite and open and friendly as possible, but someone is just not gonna meet you in the middle. Yeah. You know, so there are people who just, and that's fine, that you're not here to kind of change and grab them and force them. And
But no, I like that. I think it's so. It is important to be a nice, polite activist because that's the only way they'll listen.
And like not feed stereotype.
And not alienate them. Yeah. We were at a convention recently. Well, it was a while back, and I remember I found this moment really inspiring. You probably didn't even notice, but because you asked about there being no water fountains, and you were really determined to find one, and it made me really happy because I was like, wait, that's what I do as a vegan. I'm like, well, where are the non-dairy options? Where are this? And I always think nobody's listening, but just you doing that alone, it made me really conscious of that, and it made me be like, oh, this like activism, personal, quiet, it still does work. It still has ripples, and it was really, really cool to see that. I wondered, like, what other zero waste tactics are you uncompromising about when you travel?
And thanks for noticing. And I agree that those little moments of asking the questions and feeling not silly and ridiculous for asking them is really important and hard, obviously, to do and challenging. But I've seen interesting things happen from those small questions. But when I travel, it's interesting. I would say, like, there are definitely non-negotiable things that you have more and more. And then there are some things that you think you're non-negotiables and something happens and, you beat yourself up about it, but you just have to, like, let it go. But when and I think I've got better and better. And it's weird. I mean, it's not weird because people make decisions to not have things all the time, but you have a decision and you suddenly, like, for me to accept or buy a plastic water bottle would be like so against my like biology at this point. It's not even against my morals. Like, I literally would have like an aversion to it that I would rather be like very thirsty than buy that. And that's just decisions that you make. Or, if I'm out and about, as I was saying before, and I'm desperate for something and I don't have my reusable utensils, my reusable cup, I just like won't buy it, or I'll buy something that I can get without needing that. I think it's just like being imaginative and thoughtful. But I would say, just again, I've said reusable a million times, but it's something that I really believe in being an answer to like a real circular kind of existence in terms of like just allowing things to not, just being a circular economy essentially.
Right. So when you pack your suitcase, are you like, do you have a little list of sustainability?
I guess what I bring, for instance, when I travel is I'll have like a reusable water bottle, like a reusable cup, like a keep cup for like hot drinks, my utensils that I bring. And then I will usually bring one of the reusable like Ziploc style bags, a Stasher, one, the brand I use is Stasher bag. Or I'll also bring like a bulk canvas like bag. And I buy the bulk ones specifically because they have the tear weight labels, and a lot of places legally can't actually give it to you without having a tear weight because they need to like know it's. So trying to have those, I would say, those things. And then maybe sometimes like a Tupperware, or usually I try and fly and bring my own food.
Oh, do you? I was going to ask.
Yeah. Okay. And so those would be things. And then like, for instance, even in my wash bag, a lot of my things, whether or not I have little, I buy shampoo and conditioner and things that are all from refill. I use, just loose soap. So I have like a little travel soap dish that I take that as my soap in. I have my bamboo toothbrush. I have like smaller bottles that I put my shampoo and conditioner in. It's like all those small things, really. I don't know, that I guess before you know it, they become just your normal way to live and exist. But
completely.
There are some things that, and it's taken none of those things have happened overnight, and they've been like a slow journey. And also learning, like I've tried some things that I didn't like, or like some versions of things that I didn't like. And so you either find a better method or a better brand. So it's been like a slow thing. And I feel like it's my like armor isn't the right word, but it's like, they're like my, like, I guess it is my armor against like wasteful materials, really.
Yeah.
And it's like when I've got all my things in my bag, I feel like safe and ready to like take things on.
Yeah.
But like still living in the values I want to live in.
Yeah. I so relate to that thing about testing products and
Yeah.
not working out. I don't know how many times I've turned up to meetings smelly because I'm trying to find a good vegan deodorant.
I know, yeah, it's hard.
It's just like you do have to make sacrifices and learn a new way of living.
Try and ask people who've tried every other one, and you're like, okay, how do we put our information together? Or also finding people who you like their values and you like the way in which they communicate. I mean, obviously we're like, the beauty of things like Instagram is we can very intimately like learn about ways people are doing things. And, if you just find someone that you're like, oh, I like them and I really like the way they're talking about it, I like their values, just taking inspiration from the products, maybe, using them as a kind of guinea pig.
Real model.
Yeah.
We can't say guinea pig on this podcast.
That's
we have to say test tube.
Whoa, that's so true. There must be so many
there are so
turn
many
of phrases
and we're always saying
and again they're like so built it, you're like, oh whoa.
And people are reluctant to let them go. There's so many funny ones.
It's true. Well, role model anyway for that sentence was better.
With this Coca-Cola petition, so that was with Greenpeace, right?
Yes.
You had 585,000 plus signatures. So that was to encourage them to create new standards, wasn't it? And to move away from single use.
Yeah.
And from doing beach clean audits, there's always something from Coca-Cola, and they're top 3, aren't they?
Yeah,
of the companies. It's crazy. They're so easy to identify.
I know, bright red.
Thanks, guys, making it so easy for us. So how was this received from them when you actually went to speak to them? And have they actually done anything about it?
Yeah, not really. Sadly. So with all things as well, it's I mean, greenwashing is a massive term that we all
Momo
need to
taught me that phrase. Didn't
very
know before.
That we all need to be very, very aware of, that sadly companies are trying to kind of jump on the bandwagon of people being interested in this and therefore making these big sweeping statements, or even just in the way that they design a new campaign, which Coca-Cola have recently done, that's complete rubbish. I mean, it's total greenwashing. So when we did go to Atlanta with the petition, where they agreed to meet us, we essentially, had a photograph in their hallway of them like accepting the petition after we had a kind of meeting essentially with different people who are in those departments of like, if that even could be a department, but like environmental, affairs of that. And, it's just they're just very good at like skirting around it and saying that they, genuinely care. But the pace in which people, organizations, corporations, do things like that is just absolutely not in their ability of what they could do, in the sense that they have so much money, so much access to technology, to trying things out, to test running things, like in the sense that, they have the ability to, or funding to just test run programs that are refilling. And, like, oh yeah, we do in a few colleges, we have some, refillable fountain method ideas. I'm like, well, surely you found out in a week how successful they were. Like, just put them everywhere. I think so. That was infuriating to sort of leave and then realize they didn't do anything. And when they just sit with so much power, and I think that, in the same way as like, how sort of misproportionately spread the wealth of this world is infuriating in terms of like how unfair that is. So it was an interesting test of like showing how important it is to people signing petitions that we are actually going to meet in person to people like that, and showing that it wasn't just forgotten. And I don't know, it's just, you then realize like, wow, being a campaigner in an organization must just be so tiring.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
They work on things for years
and it's
and
just
years.
it doesn't go the way they want it to. Or often they'll try, and Greenpeace do a lot of things like this. They try and sort of go to one corporation, they don't do it, so they go to another one. Say, for instance, they then go to like Pepsi or Nestle or something, and they, because it's so competitive, they try and be like, you could be the one to
the way.
You know what I mean? So they try and kind of work with their kind of egos, really, to sort of like make them do better things. But it's a tireless thing that is always, it's like so many different prongs of attack with change. You're going to go through the individuals, you're going to go through corporate, and then you're going to go through government. So it's like at all times you need to be working at all angles, really. And I think if corporation, your policies are the best because they can fully make people, but then a lot of companies have so much money, they just pay the fines for not doing certain things.
Really?
Yeah. So it's like, what's you know?
Yeah.
So it's a complicated world. And understanding them from and how many you need really to like protect us really.
As an environmentalist, what do you see is like the next thing to work on, and what are you currently trying to change?
I would say a big thing for me, obviously at first, was, as I said, like single-use plastics, and then single-use plastics and just waste obviously like opened up as this big like, oh my gosh, not only can I think about plastic, but also just generally waste or other materials that I think are better, but are they better, and things like that. And I would say another one that's been interesting or of interest personally to me has been food waste, and soil health and composting, because that's also so related to the soil health through landfills. So essentially, which a lot of people don't realize, but in a landfill, the process of decomposition, like a peach decomposing and molding and, you know, becoming nothing again, doesn't happen in a landfill, which is where all our waste goes, because there's no oxygen in landfills.
Max Lamana was saying this.
Yeah.
He was saying that produces methane.
Yeah. So obviously we all know about CO2, and we talk about CO2 with our emissions, and that's like the main thing that we always think and focus on when we're talking about kind of the tipping point of like the planet and the health of the planet and the atmosphere and kind of global warming and the climate crisis. But methane is as big a problem, an issue, and predominantly obviously that comes from massively from cattle, and from landfill, which we're all doing all the time, thinking, oh, it's like going in the earth and it's all, at least the organic matter within it is leaving and it's going to go, and it's just the other bits and things that, but no, like, so I think with a lot of things, we need to radically rethink the systems that are like so in place. For instance, our waste system that is recycling, which we've learned now that most of it isn't recycled because we literally can't keep up with the amount of recycling that we are putting in. It just can't be, it's just too much. There's too many of us, there's too much materials. And then landfill, like what does that mean? Where is it going? When are we ever going to run out of space to put it in one? So I think it's radically rethinking that and enabling, you know, it's all very well that I'm lucky that I can go to a drop-off place for my compost in a local community garden relatively near to my house, but like a lot of people won't have that. And then some boroughs and neighborhoods will have a food waste scrap option as part of their system. So why, if that already exists in one borough or neighborhood or city, why can't that exist elsewhere? So I think that's what I'm really interested in, like systems, and how we can rethink them, and like the waste system, and thinking about like the impact not only through plastics now, but just kind of how could we better understand our waste too. I think we have like this,
right?
So psychologically is a really interesting thing. I think that humans quite like to be done with something. Yeah. Like, ooh, it's dirty, I'm done with it kind of thing. Like even you see something and it suddenly looks dirty to you and you're like done with it. Yeah. And you're like, what is that about? That we have this like desire for like cleanliness and order and like newness. Things being new and fresh and obviously, and there's so much stigma around a lot of things to think that it's like, oh, it's probably like, you know, it's like dirty or unclean or not cool, or it looks kind of a bit too earthy and granola looking, you know, which is this, you know, this stereotype, which I think is the same with waste, that those living those ways is going to make you have like a kind of unclean household, you know. And I would say it doesn't, and it is a really interesting way to like connect with like what you're doing and using and like nature.
Yeah. Wow. Bonnie, I feel like I've learned loads. I'm just really impressed.
Sorry, I'm my long answers.
No, it's awesome. I wondered if someone wanted to learn about these things, like is there a favorite book that you learned a lot from that you would recommend?
You know what? I feel like books I think things change so quickly that I feel like articles and people I follow maybe more.
Yeah. Well, who inspires you as an activist?
Big inspiration of mine and now friend, which is really nice, is a woman called Lauren Singer, who has a blog, blog, and her Instagram handle is Trash is for Tossers.
Oh yes, I follow her.
Yeah.
She's great.
And so she's really lovely. She has a great, amazing, like 0/ like low waste shop in Brooklyn called the Package Free Shop. And they're just a really great way if you just want, even if you're not within the US and you just want some inspiration on like the other methods out there of products, I would say check them out and her out. I mean, as someone to follow again, which obviously you've just interviewed, Max Amana, in terms of his story of food waste, that is like a very well, like, or that very much connects to like what I'm becoming more and more interested in with food waste and composting. And again, like the way in which he's telling that story, and the same with Lauren, is it's like, it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's like break stereotypes, it's accessible, and it's just well communicated.
Yeah.
So I think if you can find people like that speak to you, because those people might not speak to you, your listeners. I also find it hard because sometimes, you just get so in that world.
Yeah.
And you find, obviously social media or those you choose to like follow in that way, like it becomes like a lot in your face, or it's your normal, or it's your norm too.
Right.
Either it's like overwhelming and you think like, some days you just are overwhelmed. You're like, I'm not doing that. I should do that. And you start feeling bad and you spiral. Or again, it becomes your bubble of a world because you're like, everyone's doing it. It's great. Like we're all like happily doing this. And you're like, no. Or you live in a city where there are options to do that, or a neighborhood, there are options to do that. And then you travel and you go somewhere else and you're just, I find that honestly where I find it the hardest. When I travel or I go to certain kind of businesses or places, and you either you get angry because you can see that they're genuinely not making an effort where they could, like they have the money to do so or the accessibility to do so. And then other times is the opposite of that anger. And you just feel so lost and demoralized because you're in a situation where it's the least someone's thinking about, because what they're thinking about is, they're not thinking about what my food's packaged in today. They're like, can I afford the food to feed myself? Yes. Or you're going to places where like that just isn't the infrastructure to have anything but to go things. And to so it has to be all these takeaway things. So there's always this mixed feeling when you go somewhere of like, either just like,
you don't want to be a privileged.
Yeah, exactly. So it's always an interesting, within my home, I can feel quite okay. And then you go out into the outside world, but I don't know. I think with all things, everything always begins on the fringes of society in terms of fashion, of change. Like it has to somehow, and it will bleed through, and it will kind of become something in the system of things.
Amazing. That is a good place to end an interview on. I always like to end on a hopeful note. Thank you for being on the podcast. We really learned so much. But anyway, it's very inspiring to watch your work as an activist. And thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, ChickPeeps, it is Evie, just Evie here, because the other ChickPeeps are either with their families or traveling home from their families because it's the end of the holidays. And yes, everyone is a bit all over the place, so it is just me. I am currently in a vegan hotel in Scotland. I'm on a little vacay, and I got a bit overexcited when I got here, and the guy was like, the password is go vegan. And it just feels like, I feel hopeful. I feel like the world is changing. He didn't even bat an eyelid. He was like, yeah, let's go vegan. So yes, I feel very hopeful about 2020. Hope you are too. Although I need to give everyone a little lecture reminder to take your B12, because I am a little bit sick. I have a tiny bit of a cold. It's not a bad one, because guess why? I didn't pack my B12 this Christmas. And I got home and I realized this, and I was like, you know what? I'll survive. It's fine. It's only a week. I did survive, but I got a cold, which I normally wouldn't. So yes, the one thing you have to do as a vegan, I feel like there might be some new vegans listening because it is January and Veganuary, and it is just in the air. The one nutrient you really need to supplement is B12. It is very hard to, it's not impossible, but you'd have to be very vigilant to get it through fortified milks or nutritional yeast. So just to take the stress out of your vegan life, it's a good idea to take a supplement because they do not naturally occur in plant foods. They would, except they're found in the soil, in the dirt, and then we wash that off. And animals have that because they eat that dirt and then people eat them. But you don't need an animal to get your B12, so just get a supplement. As I say, it comes from the soil anyway. It's just a more careful way of making sure that you have your B12 requirements, because otherwise your immune system will get low and you will get a cold like me and you will just have regrets. So that is your little rant on B12. Thank you so much for listening. Hope everyone's well. We'll be back next week with a new episode and with some listener emails. I'm so enjoying them. So if you would like to contact us with a query about being vegan, something you're struggling with, or just some feedback to an episode, we would love to hear from you. You can contact us at ChickPeepsPod on Instagram and Twitter, and at ChickPeeps Podcast on Facebook. Or you can drop us an email, hello@thechickpeeps.com. We read them all, and we love hearing from you. And we share the ones that we think will be most pertinent and helpful to other listeners. But we try as much as we can to get back to them all. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. I hope you're all having a lovely holiday or end of holiday, start of 2020. Hope you're going easy on yourself. I know it can also be a challenging time because there is this pressure to do all your resolutions and be all improved all at once, but take it a step at a time and just remember you're doing your best. If you could do any better, you would. So yes, thank you for listening. Also, if you'd like to support us on Patreon, you can find our Patreon page on the website. We have a Discord group chat and we have some bonus episodes coming up, some with my family and their take on veganism, which is quite cute. So that's really fun if you want to join the Patreon. And we'd be super grateful if you're enjoying the podcast, if you would spread the word to your friends or anyone you think would enjoy the podcast or would benefit from it. It really helps us. The more the word is out there about ChickPeeps and the more listeners we have, it helps us grow. Thank you so much for listening. Love you guys lots. I hope you're having a lovely day and talk at you next week. In the meantime, stay spangly, take your B12.